to get to that mystical state that is common between, religious practices and psychedelics. And so we think it's not a coincidence, for example, that Zen Buddhists go and live in a hermitage or a monastery, do massive social deprivation experiments, essentially, or, these meditation practices and silent retreats and stuff. These are deprivation experiments, essentially, to get to what the Zen Buddhists are calling beginner's mind. I mean, if you were looking for a neurobiological term to explain beginner's mind, critical period reopening would be it. And so to me, this is more circumstantial evidence that altered state of consciousness, that mystical experience that's common to psychedelics and religious practices, is just what it feels like to reopen critical period.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me intuitively. I mean, you could also, on the deprivation side, I didn't even think about this piece, but it makes a lot of sense. People have historically used deprivation to do neuroscience stuff. But, people also report going into the sensory deprivation tanks completely sober and having something like a psychedelic experience. And it would just be to sort of restate what you're saying. These are non-pharmacological ways to radically change the statistics of what's coming into the brain, such that the brain sort of goes through this reboot process, so to speak.
That's what we think.
Interesting. So what are the potential risks and downsides here? So, obviously, well, before we actually get to that, so one of the exciting things about this, assuming all this stuff really sort of turns out to be true, is we can do things to help people where it was just too late before. So, for example, if someone's born with autism, being agnostic about what exactly caused that, but they go through their social reward learning critical period of some kind, they become an adult. The extracellular matrix is now hardened, and it's really hard for them to relearn or unlearn things. The idea would be we could make their brain squishy again, so to speak, for a limited period of time, give them the right kind of social stimuli, and treat or potentially even cure something like that. But we couldn't do that before because we had no way. Even if we had therapy and other tools, their brain just wasn't going to be receptive to the requisite stimuli that it needed to resculpt itself or remake itself. So is this the hope here, that now we can go in and treat or potentially even cure certain types of neuropsychiatric conditions by temporarily making the brain receptive to the right kind of stimuli again?
That's right. That's exactly the way that we're thinking about it. And we are looking at autism because, that's one of the major focuses of my lab. I will say, but we're also focused on things like stroke, where, after you have a stroke, there's a motor critical period in general, and it gets reopened when you have a stroke, and that stays open for about 3 months, but then it closes again. And to date, the only way to reopen it is to give yourself another stroke. And who wants to cure stroke by giving themselves a stroke, right? So being able to give, in theory, a psychedelic to reopen that motor critical period after a stroke would be, exactly as you described.